It's the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Great to have you with us once again. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Hi, Alan.
Hey, hi Fred, how you doing?
Terrific. Well, on top, SpaceX and the flight of Starship 5, an amazing achievement with the successful catching of the booster. We're going to look at a little video here with those chopstick arms.
Unbelievable, and and I wasn't there. It was I, I don't know. Of course, I couldn't travel on Saturday because of Yom Kippur, and I just couldn't get down there for Sunday morning. And I guess I I am not very good at forecasting, Fred.
Been there for what,
Big,
three of the five launches? Is that right?
Yeah, I've been there for three, but I really want to be there for this one, of course. But I put the probability of them actually hitting the button on Sunday morning at like -3, even though negative probabilities are impossible. I mean, what an accomplishment! What a just to be able to do that. They basically delayed what 20 minutes or something like that, and then went straight through the countdown, no hold at 40 seconds. Boom, bam, light it. They all lit. They all lit very well, although they must have had a broken line someplace because there's a little fire coming out the side. I guess we'll come back and and when the darn
Musk called this a big step toward making multi-planetary life possible.
yeah, which is the ultimate objective, I guess, is the way he's sold it, and it was good that the FAA backed off of their original estimate of having them wait until November or end of November. And I think whether or not NASA came in there and sort of encouraged them a little bit, but it was nice that the public sector went in there and gave them the opportunity to do it, because they had basically given them the information that they thought they could do it safely. And my goodness, even though first time ever, almost like clockwork, unbelievable. Do you know how many people have to not screw up to be able to do that? And not only not screw up, to all do a fantastic job. Wow, just amazing.
Greatest catch since the Immaculate Reception by Franco Harris in 72.
Yeah, and I remember exactly where I was when he made that catch too. I mean, one of my heroes.
Weren't you just
Actually,
starting out at the faculty there?
no, yeah, I guess I was, yeah, yeah, and actually, I wear his jersey every Sunday. Though it doesn't say Franco in the back, it says Pops. But my son gave me that, I don't know, a number of years ago, and I wear it every
Chuck
Sunday.
Noll,
Wore it
Terry
yesterday.
Bradshaw beat John Madden's Raiders.
Yeah, yeah, whatever. Back in the day.
Back to the present day.
Yeah,
The spacecraft also had a successful return.
yeah, and how do you put that thing down in the Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean, right next to your buoy with the camera? Then actually works to communicate and shows it to you landing. Wow, what? I mean, it really it's kudos to SpaceX. I mean, what an accomplishment. Although, as I guess I'd like to say, it is a little bit easier when you don't have people in the way, and and when there are people around you and in the way, it gets a little tougher. But man, if it only has to do with science and engineering, boom, done.
And the camera views were unbelievable.
The camera views from from SpaceX, from everyday astronaut, from NASA space flight, absolutely phenomenal what all those folks put out there in terms of cameras and tracking and 4K video. Boom. I mean, wow. Just sat there in amazement all morning
You know,
and afternoon.
they've made such progress really with each launch incrementally here, big steps. And I guess what's next to bring the spacecraft down and be able to
Yeah, I think
back?
what's next is that they really have to be able to relight the engines in when in orbit, and that's sort of the key because if you put the Starship in orbit and you can't relight the engines, then you don't know where it's coming down when it comes down. And so to have a controlled reentry, you really need to be able to relight the Raptors. And I think that's their next test. I mean, that's why they put it in a suborbital, almost orbital trajectory. And it's after it shuts off, I mean, it's on a trajectory that basically they know where it's going to hit. And small, corrections on the way down and so on, but you could see the flaps moving a little bit. That thing was flying for the last minute or so. And then they pulled it, sucker, whatever. Beautiful.
Real exciting. I exchanged notes. I had interviewed once upon a time, not that long ago, really, and I still stay in touch with Scott Parazinski, an astronaut who did these unbelievable spacewalks. I think he did 5 of them or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Flew on a bunch of missions, and he sent me a note just saying, "Wow." Yeah.
That's all I could say. Elizabeth and I were sitting there watching it, and it was exactly like the animations. They had, and to be able to sit there to control that thing or have it control itself, because in a sense it's getting its telemetry, it knows where it is, relative to where the chopsticks are, it knows how to rotate itself so that the pins actually come down within the rails so that it can catch it. You saw the chopsticks coming in close as it's coming down. I mean, it's just
Yeah, it looked like it's coming in at the angle, as people can see in the video that we showed, at an angle, and then it straightens up.
well, of course, because in case it doesn't have the control, if in case they can't gimbal the engines or they can't turn them on, that it's going to land, on the, hopefully not the beach, or so it comes in short and then comes out. It was just wow.
Just like a Tesla self-parking.
I guess, yeah, of course, yes,
On that note,
yeah.
last week, October 10th, Tesla unveiled its Cybercab. Let's talk about the pluses and minuses, Alan. Your impressions, first of all.
Yeah, well, I didn't get an invitation, so it goes to show where I stand in the world. I mean, it looked like everybody else in the world was out there. It was crowded streets of, what streets were they? Oh, that's right. It was a movie scene. Um, but yeah, yeah. Um, I was surprised. I just, to do a cybercab, robo-taxi, autonomous taxi, whatever you want to call these things, to be a two-seater, just seems like, you're trying to provide mobility to the few rather than mobility to the many. And unless you're just going to have everybody have one of these things, which you could, if you did have one for everybody, such that they could just walk in and have him take them with one other person, sort of works. But if you look at the way it seems like we are consuming mobility today as a community, we go out, we don't buy two-seater cars unless it's the second, third, or fourth car that we have that's a sports car that we, put the top down and, when it's a nice day out there and are rich enough to have one. Families or groups tend to want to travel together at times. I mean, there's a reason why cars tend to be four-door, 4, 5, 6, 7 passenger entities. There's a reason why Chrysler and others developed minivans that had room to carry more than just 2 people.
I mean,
And it just seems
they did show the van as well. I guess it's I don't know how many.
The toaster.
But I've read since that it seems to be designed to be able to go in their tunnels.
Well, I mean, sure, but if the Las Vegas tunnels remain what the original Las Vegas tunnels were, serving basically West Hall and 2 or 3 other places, then there aren't that many origins and destinations, and at least some of the time you do need a higher capacity vehicle to move the people. But if the Boring Company is successful in its plans to basically make it a network under Las Vegas to have 20, maybe more stations, the origin destination pairs, the mobility pairs, except for at CES, or maybe a couple of the other big shows, or, other than West Hall Station, you can't fill a vehicle. There aren't that many people that come at about the same time that want to go between any of those pairs. What you have is mostly, you have a many-to-many distribution patterns over 24 hours. And so if you look at demand is 1Z, 2Zs, 3Zs, 4Zs, 5Zs, not 15Zs or 20Zs. And so, sure, CES, yeah, buses, yeah, everybody, we line up, we get in those buses to go from to the hotels.
Well, he's saying that this is going to start out in California and Texas. His hope is next year, I think, with Model 3s and Model Ys.
Yeah, he did say include Model Ys, which was I don't know, yeah, maybe he did say Model 3s also. He did include Model Ys. And so that's good. And in fact, there you have, you can put 4 or 5 people in there, depending on whether or not you're going to have anybody sitting, behind the steering wheel when these things are driverless or whatever. What he is going to have to do to be able to get and have his vehicle certified by NHTSA without a steering wheel and so on, I don't know. Maybe that's why he's such a Trump supporter, and maybe he thinks Trump can do it. But who knows? He's got a hill to climb on that, and it's and
I mean, GM was trying that, and then I guess scuttled.
They went after, and they weren't successful. Nobody's been successful. Except Nuo and whatever, but not with people. And so SpaceX was able to work with the FAA and NASA to get licenses to do what they did yesterday. Okay, it's going to take at least that amount of effort, if not more effort, in terms of both proving or at least demonstrating that you can be a responsible entity out there doing what you want to do, as well as then getting the regulatory approval to do that. And one's going to need it. Otherwise, one has to have a person behind the wheel. And if you have a person behind the wheel, you got to have a wheel, I guess. Right now, there's no car that's authorized to be on the road on a joystick. Okay, so the regulatory hurdles to being able to give rides, and these things are supposed to give people rides. They're not for people to give themselves a ride. It's for them to give rides to people. And so that what that means is that there is going to have to be, if you're going to do this, there's going to have to be empty vehicle repositioning, in which the vehicles go from dropping you off, Fred, to come to offer me a ride. And that's without anybody in it. Otherwise, if you have to pay for somebody to be in it at that time, you might as well pay for, where does that come from? And that's the hurdle today. Paying for a chauffeur is not inexpensive, especially if you're chauffeuring only 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 people. If you're chauffeuring 15 or 20, they can all throw a couple bucks into the hat, and you can pay for the chauffeur. And you don't need all this automation. And
I don't pretend to understand the economics involved, Alan, but they are talking about using the compute power, making use of that, and recouping some of that kind of cost.
Sure, but what are you going to use that money for? To pay for a chauffeur? Okay, and if you're paying for a chauffeur, why have the compute power in the car? Put it in a box someplace near a dam with water going down, so you generate the electricity and it's free right there. You don't have to transmit it very far. All the compute you do, you can send it over the wires or whatever through the easily, probably more inexpensively and environmentally responsibly than sending electricity over the wire.
Is that what they're doing? Dojo up by Niagara Falls?
Well, actually, with a student, we're looking at Quebec and maybe northern Quebec. We're looking at places where, in fact, you have hydropower. You could have hydropower right there. That there's really nothing to consume it except compute engines. Woo. Why not locate them? Northern Quebec. Plus, in the wintertime, you have all the air conditioning you need for Mother Nature. Wow, I don't know. It's a wild one. It's a wild one.
Well, Elon may not be reading the book, but he has picked up your analogy, your elevator analogy.
Sort of. He sort of got it. He sort of got it. Yeah, but unfortunately, the elevator that he designed is one of these elevators in Paris hotel elevator. It's about this big, and you got to fit yourself and your wife, and that's about all that they stuck in. Who knows what, in one of those 6-story, 5-story buildings. I don't know. I guess it's fine. I'm surprised.
In the newsletter, you're saying that our analysis has indicated to us that there are many communities around the country that could benefit greatly, enabling those communities to provide safe, affordable, high-quality rides equitably throughout their communities. We've analyzed many such communities and can help, and you're asking people to RSVP by email.
Yeah, well, and if they're interested in looking at the opportunity, if these things or somebody else puts vehicles out there that in fact can drive themselves, do the engineering part, do the technical part, and do that safely, then the opportunity to give rides to people who really need rides is enormous. And if one looks at the quality of life is proportional to mobility. And it's not only the those that are handicapped or somehow limited. You know, it's a lot of other people that are limited mostly by economics. Because if you can't afford a car and you can't afford a chauffeur, then in most places in the US, you're walking. Because, you know, the public sector can't really afford to provide mobility for you. Why? Because chauffeurs are expensive. Unless you can get a bunch of people to travel together, and even then, in the congested areas, my goodness, those things aren't inexpensive. So, yeah, this is the mobility, the transit opportunity of the future for letting everybody be able to go at least between many places, maybe not all places. Of course, we've argued for some time that geez, let's get started where this works. Why wait until it can work everywhere? What? Anyway.
In Forbes, Brooke Crothers had a piece that you include in the newsletter headlined "Can't Get a Tesla Cybercab? Wave down a Waymo." And I guess the idea is to show, hey, Waymo's giving people rides today.
Yeah, they're giving people rides. I just roll my eyes at where they're giving people rides. They're giving people rides. They're giving rides to people that have, 15 different ways to go from where they are to where they want to go. They're now the 16th. And yes, if I'm doing a selfie with it and it's my entertainment, great. Otherwise, I'm not a customer. I'm not a customer except rarely. Some people could be customers every day. Some people could, but you've got to make it affordable. And unfortunately, Uber, Lyft are not affordable to many people. How could they be? You got to pay for a chauffeur that has a family to feed and deserves to be paid well. And if they're not charged well, you better tip them. You should. They're giving you a personal service. Anyway, we'll see who has the right business case.
You also highlighted in the newsletter a piece from AutoEvolution, and their headline reads, 5 polarizing facts from Tesla's We Robot Cybercab unveiling event. On top was fully autonomous Tesla EVs versus dedicated robo-taxi. And they go on to a number of issues, including the regulatory hurdles, et cetera.
Yeah, they do point out the regulatory hurdles, and the regulatory hurdles are substantial. And for the regulators, safety is important, but to make it things perfectly safe, then everybody has to stay home. So really the regulators have 2 objectives. One is provide mobility to people who really need it. That's the value proposition. And 2 is safety. And there's a trade-off between those. And sure, yes, well, of course, we would love to be perfectly safe. If you would have kept the airline industry from doing anything until it was perfectly safe, which today it is really close to be perfectly safe, thank goodness, because everybody worked hard. Just like with SpaceX, everybody worked hard and they were largely successful, essentially, not perfectly. They had a little blowout there on whatever. That stuff was burning underneath because of leakage and so on. When that thing was caught, but they had fire suppression systems on there. They thought it through. They did boom and boom, did really well. Well, we can do really well on this thing too, without being perfectly safe. And if perfectly safe is the reason for regulation, then shut everything down. That's the only way you're gonna achieve it. But NHTSA should have 2 objectives: safety and mobility. They should look at the value proposition that mobility provides at least not, if not everyone, most of the people. And they should be striving to make sure that objective is also met. Not just, hey, it's got to be safe. And the FAA could have said that to Tesla. Said, not safe enough. There's still a probability that who knows what, that the thing's gonna who knows what. But they finally said, hey, look, you folks have done a pretty good job. You've explained everything. Looks good to us. This is crazy. Nobody's ever done it before. Go for it. Thank you. But, NHTSA is going to have to do that. They can't say, hey, you've got to have a rear view mirror when there's nobody looking at it. You got to have a steering wheel when it's a computer that's using something else to turn the wheels instead of a steering wheel on a column that, well, if you crash into it, will go through your chest. A 55 Chevy. Come on, NHTSA.
Alan, you have a link once again in the newsletter to a presentation made by two of your students.
Yeah.
The Next Generation Systems Conference. It's titled Using Autonomous Taxis to Create Shared Mobility, an overview and a dive into data management. And they deserve to be in the newsletter again.
Yeah, no, they deserve. They're great. They're actually in my class this fall, and we're just having a great time. And we all watched. I had a watch party for the Tesla Cyber robo taxi event. We all were in the classroom watching.
Well, I was there virtually, so.
And you were there virtually, and we had a bunch of people, there virtually, and we had discussions the whole time. It was kind of fun. But we had, some people have watch parties for certain things. I have watch parties for robo taxi launches, whatever. It's kind of fun with the students, though. It really is.
Very interesting. And lastly, I mean, we didn't comment really about what he's talking about with these Cybercabs. He is saying they're going to sell them to the public, and he expects the price to be, and of course, they expected the price of the Cybertruck to be a lot lower too, $50,000. But he's saying $30,000.
Yeah,
at scale.
Again, I think he's trying to make a vehicle that will be more affordable. Although, really the Y and the Model 3 are fairly affordable vehicles when you actually look at the cost of the energy that it costs you to go from A to B. Maybe you're not paying for road repairs, and therefore at some point you've got to end up paying for road repairs. But thinking that individuals are going to be able to own these things and then send them out with nobody in it to, go pick up their kids at soccer practice. I don't know. There's an enormous amount of responsibility that's associated with that, of just, sending something out there and whatever that's.
And there is the question of who's responsible, isn't there?
Well, I mean, he who sendeth, it has to be. It has to be, because these things are not autonomous. They don't do anything themselves except maybe not crash. They don't tell themselves where to go and when to go. They don't give themselves a no earlier than thou shalt go to. That's all. That's all some entity. Whatever that entity is, that's the responsible one. It's the one, In the end, SpaceX was responsible for hitting the button. Okay, and they accepted that responsibility along with the FAA and and there are probably liability limits and so on and so forth and do and as there always are. There's always active war sort of outs for any responsible entity. Nobody's responsible for acts of war. Insurance companies, you can't buy insurance that's going to protect you against acts of war. So there are always those kinds of things. But, at some point up to that limit, the person that said go or set up the instruction set that then this thing used to go. If I set my thermostat in my home to turn on the air conditioning I'm responsible for that air conditioning because I told it that I set the same thing here. These things aren't going to do it. ChatGPT, whatever, isn't going to do it. Sam Altman isn't going to do it. OpenAI isn't going to do it. And and if Tesla does it, if Tesla's the one that says, hey, no earlier than thou shalt go, then they're the ones that are responsible. I guess. I mean, it's
that was the question was going through my mind because we've discussed that issue for years now. If they sell me a vehicle that has no steering wheel, has no pedals, and they say it can do really go drive autonomously completely.
Well, I don't
Are they
drive
not,
safely, drive safely
right?
From the A's and B's that it has deemed okay for it to go between at the times that it has deemed it okay. And as long as you, in terms of directing this thing, are within that operational design domain. But if you decide, like the car commercials these days, they all go out to the edge of the cliff. I mean, what the? Fred, I guess you're a camper. Do you like going to the edge of the cliffs? Is that where you? I mean, what? I don't know. But that's yeah, it's a tough. But if all of a sudden I go in there and let that thing rip and it's within the operational design domain, then I guess, and it crashes, then I guess it's Tesla that's got to be responsible. It's a product liability issue. Okay, but when somebody gives me a plastic bag that I guess has on it, do not put it over your head. I think they used to put that on plastic bags. I don't think they do that anymore. That's part of the operational design domain of that plastic bag. It'll be battled out in the courts. But at some point, somebody's got to realize that why, if you get yourself you can get yourself into a couple battles in the courts. You can have a big enough war chest to handle those. If you have to do this day in and day out, you're not in business. You can't. Not a good business plan. That startup will not work.
I guess we haven't heard the last
I tried that once. I was gonna make an automated collision avoidance system for trucks that we could retrofit in trucks, and it probably would have worked. That's when Kyle Lowe was doing the same thing for cars. I was trying to do it for trucks. Finally realized, my goodness, if we put this in trucks, we're gonna be brought in swept into every crash that truck has, whether it's our fault or not, because we're messing around with the braking system in one form or another. No way to be able to pay for the legal implications of that. Total failure, close that sucker down. I mean, after the realization, couldn't do it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's an issue. It's an issue that not just Tesla is facing, but the entire industry, clearly.
Right, but New Jersey Transit faces it. When they give somebody a ride, they're assuming responsibility for the safety of that person. Amtrak does the same thing. United Airlines does the same thing. Otis Elevator does the same thing. A lot of folks, escalators do the same thing. The sidewalk in front of your house does the same thing. Geez, sidewalks. I can't bend this finger because I tripped over a crack in somebody's sidewalk. Geez, I should have gone. No, I didn't go after them. For some of these things, yes, we can buy insurance. Sometimes you have to, whatever. But if you're trying to provide mobility for people, yes, you have to do it safely up to a certain point. Safety is not perfect. You're going to have to pay some. If they ask you to pay for everything all the time, people throw in the towel and say, forget it. I'm not going to do it. Heck with you. Take care of your own mobility. I'm not going to provide it for you. You can't pay me enough. Advanced Business Plan 101.
Well, it's going to be interesting if you're telling people that they can buy, half a dozen of the Cybercabs and go into business. Who's responsible? I
Well,
guess
if
you are as the business owner.
You as a business owner, you open up a lemonade stand, you're responsible that lemonade is good. You sell eggs into, Costco, you're assuming you're responsible that there's no salmonella in there. And if there is, you're the sure, but it's going to take responsibility, and it's not going to, and for people owning their own and that broad, I don't know. Seems like you've got to deal with responsible people. People are tough. That's the reason why yesterday was really great, but there really weren't any people involved. Okay. Sort of, but not really.
If things had gone south, there would have been a lot of property destruction, a lot of losses, but
yeah, it seemed like that, the exclusion zones that told people to stay out, they kept people out, they made sure they weren't there. And that's why that thing came in short and then brought itself in there. Because it's coming in over the water, and at least it can, I don't know, certainly, hopefully not ruin the beach. But if you hurt the beach, you can go out there and restore the beach pretty well.
Before we wrap up, Alan, big news at Princeton University over this past week, too. And another Nobel laureate.
Well, not only another Nobel laureate, and it really is the Institute for Advanced Study, which is where John still is. I mean, John Hopfield, I consider a good friend of mine. I mean, it is amazing. We play golf. We discuss neural networks in this backyard. And for years, I've been suggesting, my goodness, John is deserving of a Nobel for his work and early work and continued work on neural networks and what's powering the whole AI call it AI revolution these days. And for John, I woke up, as I do, I look at my phone, go to the New York Times announcement, John Hopfield won Nobel Prize in physics. Wow. I mean, it went nuts. I mean, talk about being starstruck. What a wonderful, so well-deserving. What a nice guy. Just, wow, 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 wow. So this last week or so has been, pretty wow. And the Tesla cyber car and the robotaxi announcement was also pretty wow. And I'm a little critical. Would have liked to see something a little bit different, but very nice. But the chopstick catch, the success of SpaceX, and me personally having John Hopfield so deservingly win a Nobel Prize in physics for something that, thank goodness for the committee, the physics community, to realize that, in fact, to embrace a little broader scope of the definition of physics to include this, which could be called, I don't know, computer science, neuroscience, whatever, and to award John and Jeff Hinton, who absolutely pioneer also from the University of Toronto. Wow. I'm like a kid in a candy store these last 10 days or so. So many good things. It's a nice time to be alive.
And congratulations, John. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com. Also, wherever you turn to for podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Amazon. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alan Kornhauser. Thanks for listening or watching, and please continue to stay safe.